Very rude. Okay. Hello and welcome to The Agenda here on Politics Social. I'm Graham Hughes and I am joined, as always, by Phil Moorhouse of A Different Bias. How you doing, Phil?
I'm all right. You've got a super chat immediately. You don't have to tell me to shut up.
Immediate super chat, yeah. I mean, that's how I was on a hot mic at the very beginning of this, so you might have caught the tail end of our conversation. I was just saying I didn't want to feel rude cutting off Phil for like a super chat coming in. But One Angry Pagan, oh, that's the wrong button. I pressed the subscribe button. One Angry Pagan, thank you very much for the super chat. All hail the indomitable badger. Hail, and then badger emojis. Yeah, big shout out to Scott and Leonora's and Pete, and obviously One Angry Pagan, California Dreamin', Graham Hallow and others, and Katrina in there. If you would like to join them in the chat, all you need to do is hit the subscribe button, wait for a minute, and you will join them in the chat. But don't be a troll, or we will mute you and boot you. Anyway, Phil, let's get into it. We're going to be talking about Labour today, and Keir Starmer's dilemma. Is he going to have to raise taxes in order to pay for the military spending that we don't need? Because Russia's obviously a big friend of ours now, and we shouldn't be scared of Russia. Being scared of Russia is just Russophobia, isn't it? Yeah. Really, if you think about it.
But I mean, the first thing to note is there's a certain way that this is being characterised in the media today. So I saw in the newspaper pressure on Starmer to raise defence spending to 3% of GDP. Ed Davies going, Starmer needs to raise defence spending to 3% of GDP. And you think to yourself, why are they all saying 3%? Is 3% the magic number? No, the reason they're all saying 3% is because Starmer already has a plan to raise defence spending to 3% of GDP. He hasn't announced it yet. It was all laid out in an article in The Standard. He hasn't raised it yet because he's been trying to get Rachel Reeves to go along with it, which she's sort of coming round to. I can go over the reasons for that later if you're interested.
Yeah, I am interested.
The point is... When
was this article? When did it come out?
Yesterday. Well, I saw it yesterday.
Okay.
I saw it yesterday. So as far as I know,
that is going to be the plan. I did a whole spiel this morning about how it's not a particularly good idea to raise, defence funding.
But the thing is, I mean, it's not going to be 3% next year. I mean, we're talking 10 years' time.
Yeah.
But the whole point of it is, it's not so much like we can't overnight, even if you just found the money, right? You can't turn that money into troops and equipment overnight.
Yeah.
And there's really tricky thing to do. And lots of people are calling for this, and it's a very sensible thing to call for. What we really need to do is to make sure that these boosted European forces are buying equipment from European suppliers.
Yes.
So that boosts your own economy as well to offset some of the costs. And also, American supplies are going to be a bit unreliable. However, you can't I imagine at any rate, you can't come straight out and say that, because Trump wants he wants European countries to spend more of their GDP on defense. Okay, fine. But he wants them to do that by buying American stuff.
Yeah.
So that's quite tricky. But yeah, the plan is to raise it to 2.5% of GDP by 2030 and then 3% of GDP by 2035. Yes, how do you fund it? Because Labour's position up until, well, it hasn't announced it yet. It's going to announce it this summer. He may announce this early. That's the news we're getting, that as soon as he's got that agreement from Reeves. The reason, by the way, just quickly why she's been hesitant is because, you know how politicians, and they've done this right from, since I was a kiddie, they always say things like, and they'll say it in both government and opposition. They talk about waste in government departments. Oh, we're going to cut down on waste, so much waste.
Waste.
It is actually true in the Ministry of Defence. There was a report a few years ago from the Public Accounts Committee, and they were absolutely scathing of the Ministry of Defence because they bring in officials from all government departments because they're the ones who are supposed to be scrutinised public spending. And they ask them questions about what they're spending, how are they prioritising their budgets and what benefit the public's getting. And they just got no answers from the MOD. They're constantly getting no answers. It's like they don't know what they're spending their money on. They don't know what the value is to the public of what they're spending it on. And I've done a video on this for this afternoon on my own channel. I I remember some time ago us buying tanks that don't work in the desert at a time when our military operations were primarily in the desert. You know, and there's all sorts of things
they
like
were
this.
ordered 10 years earlier when we were fighting in Bosnia, you know. Peacekeeping in Bosnia, I should say. We did get a super chat in there, Phil, from Paul Ewan. Thank you very much for £2, saying the fruit pastels are on me. Oh, thank you very much, Paul. That's very kind of you.
I like fruit pastels.
Yeah, and Benjamin saying the BBC News are saying they're having a surplus is good, but criticising a surplus when it's not as high as people were saying. It's because Hunt removed £3 billion every month after his last budget. And there was an article on Tortoise News about how much the Rwanda scheme cost. And I mean, we knew it was around this figure, but it was 715 billion. Oh no, million. Sorry, not
million.
Million.
It was going to go to billions. It wouldn't have been that much. Though.
And most of that
we
went
could basically
to Paul
buy
Kagame,
Rwanda for that.
Yeah, who took that money and invaded his neighbour, the DRC. And
well, that's the thing. They're trying
now in Eastern.
Exactly. I mean, this is the madness of it. Tories who are trying to say, we're just going to legislate to say it's safe. There's there were at the time border skirmishes that have actually escalated since.
Yes, they have escalated. It's quite horrific what's going on, and the fact that we're basically paid for the militia groups coming from Rwanda to do this to their neighbour. We've bankrolled a terrorist organisation that's gone in and taken over cities like Goma.
Well, yeah.
So anyway, let's talk about So you're saying that we're going to have this increase of to 3%,
so Reeves, again, the standard of getting their information with off the record briefings, obviously. So take it with a pinch of salt. But the idea seems to be that Reeves, like McSweeney, apparently has been saying to Starmer, "Look, overrule Reeves. We need this announcement." It's a shame he didn't do that when she was announcing things like the winter fuel allowance policy and the inheritance tax policy. But never mind. But Starmer's insistent, apparently, he's not going to do that. He wants to persuade Reeves rather than sort of lay the law down. But because we know he's sort of like that anyway, he gets agreement. But Reeves, for her part, she just sees it as this leaky bucket. So the deal may well be fine, but the Ministry of Defence spending has to come under the Treasury. Like the Treasury will have oversight over it because these clowns keep spending it on pizzas or something. So that may well be what happens. You would imagine that Starmer wants to be, because the spending review has been put back anyway. So in theory, it could have been announced with a spending review this summer. Yeah. But he may well want to announce it with Trump now. Apparently, because
before you go on, Phil, before you go on, we have got another super chat from One Angry Pagan. Thank you very much, sir. It's very kind of you. Phil, did you see John Healey's update on what they've done so far in laying out what's to come? A lot of Tory wastage to be dealt with, which is exactly what he was talking about. Spending money on.
But well, I mean, it's not
the Rwanda scheme.
In all honesty, that's not just the Tories. That happened under Labour. The stuff with the tanks was under Labour. It's been happening for decades. Yeah. Military procurement in this country has been ridiculous. Because we've given the job to people who are like military people, but they don't know how to budget.
So just to talk about what they can do, what Rachel Reeves can do. I mean, this is going to be an extra, $5 billion a year?
No. It'll be about 20.
20. This is by the time 3%. I'm talking about taking up to 2.5% here. So
it's more like
20 billion an extra. So we've got tax cuts to unprotected departments, public services, social care, local government, or you can't tax measures.
You can't cut 6 billion. They know that. The thing is as well, you think about this magic number, don't matter what it is, 2.5%, 3%, it's a percentage of your economy. What matters if you're talking about building up a force that can counter Russia in the future, what matters is what your capability is. That's nothing to do with the percentage you're spending. You need a raw amount of money to spend on a set number of troops and set equipment and all the rest of it. And 3% of a growing economy is worth way more military capabilities than 3% of an economy that stays the same for the next 10 years as well. So obviously they're not going to do anything that hampers that growth, because that is, I know you do get short-term thinking in politics a lot, but that would be ridiculous short-term thinking. So whatever it is, however they finance it, it, I mean, yeah, maybe there's the odd program you could still try and make a cut on here or there, but you would think Reeves went through everything with a fine-tooth comb before. You're not going to
Well, that's the
cut
hope, isn't
6
it?
billion. You're not going to cut 6 billion worth. So, I mean, you could understand how late. So Labour's position up until now has been, we are going to raise it to 2.5% when the economy allows. And that way, that's fine, because then you don't have to come up with a plan for it. But if they're going to say by 2030, that's a definite date. So then they can't fall back on that. They've got to say, well, what if the economy doesn't improve? So you can't just say, we expect to be able to pay for it by, a better economy, because that's basically Liz Truss line. I mean, they can try and say it, but I don't think it's going to convince many people. So, yeah, they are likely, you would think, to have to talk. I mean, you could say, we expect the economy to improve, but if it doesn't, our backup plan is this tax rise or something like that. Ed Davies talked about a tax increase on tech companies. Whatever you do, however you do it, what you could do is to say, we will increase taxes where it will least impact ordinary people to pay for it if necessary, but we believe that the economy will grow enough to be able to allow for this.
Yeah.
You could do that.
Okay. So, I mean, the economic implications to all this as well, if we, higher borrowing costs and rising gilt yields and stuff like that. I mean, the potential for the negative effects on public services, even if it's just, like you say, tidying up around the edges kind of thing. This is going to be spun, isn't it, in the newspapers in a way that's not going to be flattering to Labour, however they do it.
Not necessarily. It depends on the outlet, because there are some outlets that recognise that this needs to happen. Remember, not all the media outlets they're a little bit split on this. I mean, if you look at the last couple of days in terms of Trump, like you had yesterday, the Daily Mail, the Daily Express front page basically attacking Trump. I didn't have that on my bingo card. And today, the Daily Telegraph's front page has basically likened Trump to Hitler. They said, he's basically Hitler at this point.
Well, that was remarkable yesterday. It really was. Like, every single newspaper was calling Trump out, united against Trump.
Even the Express.
Even the Express and the Mail. The Telegraph, not so much, but the Telegraph has gone absolutely bonkers over the last few years. The Telegraph is just the craziest. It is the crazy paper now.
They've basically called him Hitler today. And it's like, if that had been said in the Mail, you would have sort of thought to yourself, are they attacking him or praising him? We're not quite sure. But when it's the Telegraph, you sort of assume it's an attack.
Yeah, indeed. But yeah, we've the other side of this as well is not just how the public are going to take this, but other Labour MPs. I mean, they've got a majority over 200, so I don't think they're too concerned about not getting
It's really about phrasing. The public want this spending. Like, it's absolutely insane. At the moment, probably defence spending is the number one thing that the public want more of. Like,
so you think that as long as that's explained, as long as it is, we're putting up taxes,
people
in order to
do want the increase in defence spending.
Yeah.
So it's purely a matter, like, the thing is...
You can't dismiss it as woke, can you, Phil? You can't say, oh yeah, that's all woke. Sorry, just before you go on, John J. Johnson, thank you very much for the super chat. Prepare for huge austerity to fund foreign wars. I don't agree. I don't think Labour are going to go in for austerity. I could be wrong, but... And
also, you say future wars. We're not invading anyone. They're invading us. This absolute tanky nonsense about, you're future in wars. So the alternative is we just all lay down and let Russia, who has said that it intends its empire to sweep the whole of Europe, the whole of Europe. They've said that explicitly, officially, the Russian government. So we just say, we're Russian now. Okay, sure.
Yeah.
Actually, we won't be Russian. We'll be Soviet, because it'll be the Soviet Union again.
It will be, which is the
Soviet
biggest,
Reich.
Yeah, the biggest mistake in history in the 20th century wasn't the rise of Nazism. It was the defeat of the Soviet Empire and the crumbling apart of the Soviet Union into 15 constituent parts, according to Vladimir Putin.
Yeah.
Yes. So yeah, I was just going to talk about Labour MPs being on board with this. Can you see any kickback? Like, do you see any Labour MPs saying, "No, You know,
Yeah,
are there any tankies?
the usual suspects, the ones who want us to just, the ones who think that it's absolutely outrageous for a Western power to invade another country, which if it's a war of aggression it is, but oh no, if it's an Eastern country attacking a Western country especially, or even each other, they don't mind if it's each other. Then yeah, they've oh no, you're just saber rattling if you try and like defend people.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, but there's very few of them. The bottom line is this is powerfully public in the country, which means it'll be powerfully popular, sorry, for Labour MPs as well. It is a matter of like the public will always get on board with a thing with an outcome. If you say we want to achieve this outcome, yeah, we're totally behind that. Then you say we're going to achieve it via this method, and then that's when it's like, oh no, I'm not sure about that. Yeah. So that's what the bit you have to get right.
So
cuts won't be popular.
No,
and they will be self-defeating.
Yeah,
tax rises depends
how it's done,
and you'll have to be very clear about what it means and what it means for those individuals because.
It's
yes,
really
some
hard
Tory
for
press
them to fight against, though. You know, you're right. The Tory press, what are they going to do? Oh, we need more. We need more. You know, we need more.
Some of them will come
funding.
Up with
okay, well, we'll put up taxes then. Oh no, we don't want you to do that. It's like we have to, and you've told us to, so we're just doing what we're told.
Yeah, but they can do what they like, and also they'll come up with some other way we could do it. They'll talk about cutting the woke budget.
Yeah, well, I mean that's it. You can't argue that giving the military more to spend is woke.
They will say instead of raising taxes, we should just cut benefits.
Yeah,
That's what they'll say.
George Andrews in the chat is saying, assuming nothing too crazy happens, this should result in having a higher outright defence spending than Russia, with some good real terms growth. The highest flat and percentage amount in Europe. Fiat or flat?
And no.
We've got, in addition to that, and therefore the third highest military spending in the world. If the EU follows suit, we might actually be able to compete on the same playing field as the USA. And before you just jump in there, Phil, we got another super chat that came in from Brad W. This is the length Trump will go to so Putin doesn't release photos of him exposing himself to the late Queen and his last state visit to the UK. Yeah, thanks for that, Brad. Very kind of you. But yeah, I don't think there's any compromise on Trump because I don't think he'll care if it came out.
No. I don't.
He'll just say it's fake news. He'll say it's AI. He'll say it's AI generated.
Trump is supporting Putin, not because Putin's blackmailing, because he wants to support Putin for whatever reason.
Because he's in love.
He wants to.
Yeah. Well, he wants Putin's regime for the people of America.
Yeah.
And now, if you heard today, Elon Musk has got the US Marshals on side.
So what I've seen is that Musk is now. Do you know how he was whining it with on Twitter? I think when it was still Twitter, I can't remember. But he was going on about advertisers why will just piss off that if you don't like it, and they did. And they said, "Why are people pissed off?"
Yeah, I'm going to sue you. Now he wanted to sue them for pissing off.
Yeah, he did. But now he is reportedly telling them if they don't start advertising, he's going to use his new powers to come down on them.
Wow.
Because he is getting access to information he should not have access to. He has now access, I think courts are still blocking a little bit, but he's ramming through that. He is getting access to the detailed, private, confidential financial data of his competitors. Yeah. And they don't have his equivalent thing. So it's an unfair playing field.
It's just insane.
I mean, either something like that, you just make it publicly available so everyone can see it, which I'm fine with. But you don't have a situation where the richest man in the world can see everyone else's balance sheet and they can't see it.
I think he's being set up to fail by Trump, because when everything goes tits up in the economy over there, which is already happening now, it's inflation.
I think Trump expects to ride it out, because otherwise, if that was the case, I mean, Trump could
put the
still
blame onto Musk.
He will. Oh, he'll absolutely. If it looks bad for Trump, But at the moment, Trump does not expect to do that. And the reason I say that is because he has said the economy is going to go very badly for a while before it gets better. Now, why say that if you were planning on throwing someone under the bus? He's saying it because what he wants to do first, he knows, first of all, that he's going to tank the economy.
Yes.
And he's trying to get a situation whereby his supporters go, stop making a fuss. It's all part of the plan. He said so. He said the economy is going to tank. He said we're all going to be eating stones for a few years. But then then in a few years' time, we'll be eating gold stones. So that's what he's going to try. Now, if it turns nasty for him and it all goes wrong, and at the moment, I'm praying for stupid evil. Do you know what? People have been criticizing. Elon Musk did this interview where he was clearly as high as a kite. Clearly as high as a kite. And people are criticizing this. And my response to that is no, feed him more drugs, because at the moment, our best hope is stupid evil, that they are not actually competent enough to carry out their, because they have their intentions. Their intentions are not in anyone's interest but their own.
True.
So the only thing that stops them is the fact that they're too stupid to carry it out. Feed them more drugs.
So this morning I was talking about the dangers of increasing military spending above a certain amount, and I acknowledge that we do need to spend more on the military at the moment because the sorry state of the British Armed Services after 14 years of Tory misrule, spending money on shite instead of spending money on things that the country actually needs. But I was talking about different countries and how whenever they've had a big boost in military spending, what it's led to invariably is more totalitarianism, more like, oppression. So what I was talking about is the need for stronger ties with the EU, stronger ties with Europe militarily. We're already in NATO, fantastic, but America's going to be not necessarily pulling out of NATO, but it's going to be stepping back from its commitments, which is essentially quiet quitting NATO. Which I think we could do with, instead of, us all trying to take, each individual country trying to take it on themselves, expanding NATO to include places like New Zealand and Australia, which are already part of Five Eyes, and places like, look into places like Japan as well. Shared defense.
But their focus is the Pacific.
Yes, I know.
So we haven't got the resources to commit to go into the Pacific.
Have we not?
No, we tried that. And one boat crashed into another. So I'm not kidding. We actually had two naval ships crash into each other.
I don't mean just Britain on its own, but it doesn't necessarily mean that.
We haven't got the resources. Right. At the moment, we cannot even stop. Right. Think about Russia. Russia's not a superpower anymore. It's got a tiny economy. It's like it wouldn't even be in the top 5 economies in Europe, I don't think, or only just. It's smaller economy than us on our own. Like an island off the northern coast of Europe. Its military got stuck in the mud. Its commanders were using mobile phones to communicate with each other because they didn't have encrypted radios, right? They're a joke. The idea that some of the wealthiest countries in the world in Europe cannot stop Russia invading one of our own is ridiculous. Now, no one has a plan for us to be able to say, right, we're going to build up our military in 10 years' time, we're going to take back the rest of Ukraine. No one's saying that because we have this fear. I even heard earlier this week someone saying, from Britain's point of view, from the government's point of view, that this peacekeeping force we send in, that also requires America's help, is not going to be on the front line. It's going to be like looking after ports and stuff like that. And they said, because the idea that we would actually wage direct war with Russia is ridiculous. It's like, why is it ridiculous? Well, why would you say that?
Phil, I think you're talking about slightly different things because we already had a defensive alliance with countries like Australia and New Zealand back in World War One and World War Two. They were part of the Commonwealth.
Because that was a world war.
I know. But what I'm saying is the combined intelligence and the buying things off from Australia and everything else, but bringing them into NATO, it's not going to just be about Russia in the future. It could also be about China. It could also be about the USA, the way it's going. And so I feel like having a bigger alliance that has a treaty that if any of us have any bother with any of these knobheads, then we'll all pitch in to help. It doesn't necessarily mean we have to do military maneuvers in the South Pacific.
It does mean that. It actually does mean that.
Well, why? I mean, there's members of NATO that don't do that. What does North Macedonia send submarines out to? It's a lot.
Yeah, but we're also not expecting a lot of them when it comes to war.
Yes.
The thing is, you're talking about that as if like at one time maybe Russia kicks off and Australia helps, and another time maybe China kicks off and we help. It's like they're both kicking off at the same time.
Yes. So I think it's
No,
even more
we have to
pertinent
be able to
to.
defend Europe. There is none of it won't work. Like you have to be able to you need a European defence force first and foremost. In the future, if we can secure Europe, sure. But right now, we cannot secure Europe without America, and America's pulling out.
And so wouldn't it be a smart move to get as many other countries, the
They
alliance of
won't.
the
They've got their own
willing,
problems.
to
They've got
help?
their
I
own
mean,
problems.
the
Australia
Australian
has
troops went
is
into Iraq. I mean, it's
yes,
nothing to do with
but
them.
that was a very quick thing. That was a very it was actually that affected
They went
everyone.
into
But that
Vietnam
was
as well. That was nothing to do with them.
well
We
that
didn't.
yeah that was but in the here and now they've got China to worry about. China's getting ready to invade Taiwan.
Okay, but look, it's not going to cost us any extra to include these countries. It's going to help because
But they also won't
will
send anything.
also add their military budgets. What they've
won't.
got could be, pooled with us. And obviously, we've got the Five
It's
Eyes
not.
military
Won't.
intelligence, which I think needs to be redone now because the US is not a trustworthy ally. They're sharing
Yeah,
their
but
information with the Russians about our
yeah,
our
well,
intelligence
we
agents.
have to hope not. But if they
Well,
are,
they are. That's what
because
they are.
I actually talked to this about a security expert, and they have to say, we can't actually. It's like the only thing we've got with America,
Yeah.
basically, the strength of that intelligence. So without it, we're blind. The Five Eyes are actually blind without America.
I think you're right in terms of we can take on Russia. Definitely. I mean, it's a joke. It's an absolute joke. It's a paper tiger. But we have to look at the future here of the way the world is going to look in 10, 20 years' time. And if America continues down this route of the Sovietization of Russia, of the USA.
Well, that's fine. We leave them alone. They don't like China, so they can deal with China. They can defend Taiwan. They might actually
They
do
won't,
that.
though. They're not going to
Well,
defend. Why
that's
would
up to them.
Trump defend Taiwan? He's not going to
Because
do it.
he's surrounded by people who love Putin but hate Xi. That's why.
I'd be very
They have a
surprised
very
if Trump
different-
did anything about, if
We will
anything, they're
see, because
encouraging their territorial ambitions in the South China Seas and with Taiwan by
No.
capitulating to Russia. and
Well,
Putin.
there is that.
Yeah, go ahead,
So
lads.
that makes China more likely to think that America. But in actual fact, the people that Trump surrounded himself with are pro-Russia but anti-China. They have a very different viewpoint
Well,
to each other.
I think it would be an improvement on the situation that we've got at the moment with NATO in particular. If America
we
is
just
going
need
to
a-
step
we-
down,
Yeah, we need a European defence force.
but we're going to include Canada, or we're just going to get rid of them as well.
Well,
Because
what you
Canada's
could do is
useful.
split it up. You can have because we also need to patrol the North Atlantic, which is what NATO is supposed to be about.
Yes.
So you could include that for there. So around Greenland and Iceland and places like that
Yeah.
against Russian subs. But in terms of like protecting against land invasions, I think you just need a European defence force.
Yes, I agree. But and for the future of what we're looking at now, I think that strong alliances with Commonwealth countries and with places like Japan would be in our interest if we say, hey, listen, Japan, I know it's not very likely, but if if Okinawa ever gets invaded by the Chinese, then we'll be there for you, knowing that that
Yeah,
probably won't happen.
but we haven't got any ships. We used to have loads of ships during the Cold War. We haven't anymore.
Well, I think we're going to start building them up again pretty soon. But
Well, we do.
things are
Well,
going.
Yes, but we haven't got the money. It's like, it's again, it also costs even more to have like units who are specialized in this one. We've got because
Yeah.
different terrain and different parts of the world, you need different. Like I've just said about the earlier on, the tanks that can't work in the desert because of the filters, and the same with ships. Some naval ships are fine in cold water, some in warm water, some not so much in. So you're trying to. You can't. We haven't got the money to be able to develop capabilities to fight in lots of different parts of the world. We're going to have to develop capabilities to fight in Eastern Europe because that is what we need to focus on.
Yeah.
And we need to pull all our money into being able to fight that sort of war. I mean, it was absolutely insane when Boris Johnson was being asked a few years ago by a select committee about the future of war and a military capability, and he said, tank battles don't exist.
I know.
Says they don't exist these days, and it's like.
That's true.
Right.
But the assistance that we provide, I mean, it wouldn't be NATO, would it? It would be something else. It would be an extension of an alliance, and you'd have associate members or something. And the deal could be simply, we will give you logistical support. We will give you X, Y, Z. It doesn't necessarily need to. Okay, we're going to be there for you in a way that Article 5 is it of NATO, which says if one of you gets invaded, we all get invaded. It doesn't have to go that far. But what I'm saying is furthering the military alliances that we have with friendly partners around the world is of critical importance right now, because we've lost the USA. The USA is gone. Like, there's people out there holding out hope, and I think they're smoking the copium.
It's because it's essential. We have to smoke
the copium.
Like what Starmer has already apparently he's already sounded this out with Trump's team. Yeah. They're happy with it. So the deal really is that European countries work a way to improve their defense spending in return for America continuing to support NATO while that process takes place.
Right.
Because Trump, he's not the brightest of buttons, but he knows that they can't just whip up a military overnight. And also Trump, the point that was being made in this article is Trump gets to claim a win anyway. A lot of what Trump's doing is just for adulation. So, Starmer visits him next week.
Yeah.
There they are, they have their little talk. They've already decided in advance what they're going to say. So they have the little talk. Then they do their press conference. Keir Starmer announces that he's going to increase, defense spending to 2.5% of GDP by 2030, 3% by 2035. And Donald Trump then announces that he's the one who's made this happen. He's been in the White House for a few weeks and he's already got this out of him. And he gets his win. He gets his win. He's changed the world.
Just to go over a couple of messages. A couple of people are complaining about not being able to put super chats in. Maybe reset your browser. Maybe log out and come back in again or something. I don't know what's happening there. And I must have misspoke before. I know Okinawa is part of Japan. I've been to Okinawa. I'm saying if the Chinese invaded Okinawa and we had to go and help them out. Maybe I misspoke. I don't know. And Jump James is saying, to be fair, tank battles didn't really exist during World War II either. It's a very rare thing for a tank fighting other tanks, apparently.
We've had a lot since, though. Yeah. We have them these days.
Yeah. ANPJ 2006 says our armed forces are well trained with state-of-the-art weapons, but tiny. And that's sort of the issue. Even if we do pump loads more money into the military, we've got a staffing shortage. We've got a recruitment.
You have to train people up.
Disaster at the moment, where young people aren't thinking about the army as a military career. And reading the news stories today about the young woman who was driven to suicide by bullying, sexual harassment, rape in the army. It's not a great advert, is it? At the time that we need people to think of it as a career.
It is a good career, potentially. My niece, who, is only fresh out of university pretty much, is earning 50 grand a year. She's like in her early 20s. She's earning 50 grand a year in the Navy. So it is a good career for she's a weapons officer for some people, but it's not seen as it.
Yeah.
And again, that is something that Labour have also sorted out. One of the problems with the army was the shite accommodation because it was privatised.
Right.
So Labour have actually, one of the bits of national, I keep getting these comments, Labour are too right-wing. It's like, right, mate, there's more nationalisation coming out of this Labour government than has happened in my entire lifetime. So they've nationalised army accommodation, and they did that in the old-fashioned way by just buying it out. Very expensive. But they had to, because if you cannot give soldiers decent accommodation, you're not, that's not a great recruitment.
Yeah.
It's not great for recruitment.
Someone's sitting there in a board meeting going, how do we make money out of the army? Oh, well, what we could do is we'll get Hilton hotels to make the accommodation for them. Okay, yeah. Because someone's got to make money every step of the journey.
It's like student accommodation. It absolutely blows my mind. You will make more money renting a house out to students than you can possibly by renting it out to anyone else that would want to rent that house.
Yeah.
And yet the standard's shite.
Yes. It always has been.
Absolutely appalling. Yeah. And it's the same thing here.
No. The Young Ones was originally conceived by Ade Edmondson and Rick Mail from their experience of living in Fallowfield in the terraced roads.
Yeah, but they made a fuss. There was no wrong with Oak House. I was there; it was fine. But I have been into some actual private student accommodation. It was awful.
Yeah. So you must have gone sometimes to the terraced house, the row of terrace streets opposite Oak House.
Yeah.
By Scruffy, what was it? Scruffy Murphy's and the Queen of Hearts on the corner.
Yeah. But, I mean, there was some. I mean, there was a friend of mine who was in Levenson. It was a short walk away, and his was a shithole, and they tried to stiff them on the deposit when they moved out, so he just left an infestation.
Oh wow! Do you remember Scruffy Murphy's?
Right, yeah,
it's absolutely tiny. It was like a little box at the side of the bigger pub, which was the Queen of Hearts. And
was that they've converted church?
Yes, yeah. I watched Manchester United go down into the old third division equivalent. Of third division.
I
watched that at the Queen of Hearts. I've never seen so many grown men cry in my life.
Unfortunately, when I remember at the Queen of Hearts watching a football match with a rather different outcome. Yeah. It's where Man United beat Newcastle United in the FA Cup final.
Oh shit! Well, I was there when in 1999 when Manchester United did the treble, which was quite fun. Where was I? Was at Henry J. Bean's watching the European final. Yeah.
The UEFA Cup final, not the UEFA Cup, Champions League final, where Michael Owen and Ole Gunnar Solskjaer came from nothing to score 2 goals right at the end.
Yeah.
In Fergie time, maybe.
Fergie time. Them were the days, eh? Everton are above Manchester United in the league right now.
Everyone's above Man United at the moment. They're going to get pissing relegated. Have you seen them?
Shit they're doing. Yeah.
I don't watch sport these days, but I keep a bit of a weather eye on it. I cannot believe where Man United are. And I don't want to be like, I don't want to be shitting on Man United, even though I sort of do.
But it just goes to show how much of a difference it makes who your manager is. David Moyes.
Well, the thing is, as well, also, I would say,
great.
It's not just your manager. It's not just your manager. Like, I would say Ole Gunnar Solskjaer was doing a really good job as manager, and he was shat on. They made him take his old teammate back, Ronaldo. He wasn't a fit for the team. Like, he needs a team built around him, and they didn't have that. So he's a lazy sod. And
what, Solskjaer's a lazy sod?
No, Ronaldo.
Oh right, okay, sorry.
He just wanders around the field like he's having a daydream half the time. He's only interested when someone's feeding him.
Solskjaer once told me that I need to improve my Norwegian.
Oh, yeah.
It's a random story, but there you go.
They're in 15th place. They're only 3 places above the drop zone. I mean, they're 12 points above the drop zone, but still.
Ivan Ambrose, thank you very much for the £10 super chat, my friend. The increase in defence spending is absolutely necessary, but it must not be done off the backs of disabled people and an already dysfunctional mental health system.
Yeah, they won't be able to cut. They won't be able to cut £6 billion a year off the benefits budget.
No, they just can't. I mean, it's just impossible. So it's going to be tax rises, isn't it? Let's face it.
Or there are other ways to finance it.
Yeah.
There's Donald Tusk's idea, which is European-wide common debt, which then doesn't have to appear as part of the UK budget,
right?
But would also be predicated on the idea of building up capabilities in Europe, so you buy from Europe, not America.
Yeah.
Which I think Trump might have something to say about, but there you go.
Yeah. Just before we go on, I just wanted to talk. I was talking about Scruffy Murphy's, this tiny little pub, about the size of this room, right? And I went there one night when I was a student, so it must have been like 1999 or something. And I thought that it was Paul Kay, who was the guy who does Dennis Pennis. He was doing a stand-up thing. And I got there and I was really disappointed because it wasn't Paul Kay. It was a guy called Peter Kay, who I'd never even heard of. He was like this quite large northern comic. And he was fucking hilarious, to be fair. But where is he now? That's what I want to know. Anyway, moving on. So I want to talk about this meeting that we've got going on soon between Starmer and Trump. You don't know whether Macron's going to get there first. Pip to the post by Macron.
See, I thought Macron was supposed to be meeting him first, but
I would not want to be Keir Starmer doing that meeting for all the tea in China. Like, no way. Absolutely no way. What a shit job, mate. What a shit. He's got to lie.
Yeah, but...
He's got to lie for our interests, or tell him the truth and then fuck our economy.
He has to tell him some truths, though. He does have to tell him some truths. Yeah. There's certain truths he can leave out. He can leave out the fact that Trump's a fucking man-child. But, he does have to... I mean, his angle has to be in terms of, I mean, first of all, one thing about this, this defense boost, I mean, he can first of all say to Trump, but we won't be able to afford it if you slap us with tariffs. So, just think about that, mate.
Yes.
And then the other thing is he has to persuade Trump that it's not in his personal. So Starmer will know he doesn't care about American interests.
Yeah.
So he'll have to link it with Trump's personal interests by the line that they will try and take is, so you get a peace deal and you're, hey, I got a peace deal, I'm the great peacemaker, brilliant, I should get a Nobel Prize. But if it all goes to shit really quickly because the security guarantees are not real, then you're going to look like a right turnip in a year's time where Putin invades again.
Yeah.
So that's the line he will have to take with him. And that will be the truth. That's the truth he'll have to tell him. You're going to look like a prize turkey if Putin, who has never kept a promise in his life, don't keep this promise. So you've got to make sure he does.
This is why you need to be an advisor to the Labour Party.
They'll know that. They'll know that.
Do they know?
Yeah, they'll know that.
Chris, thank you very much, Chris C, for the £5 super chat. It's very kind of you. You say that, Phil, but Kendall looking to cut $5 billion from welfare bill, and she's moaning that Reeves won't let her reinvest in work programs. So
no, she's not. She's not cutting from the welfare bill. There's no announcement of that. If she was planning on doing that, like, why would they do it this way? Like, the Tories were cutting the welfare bill, Labour came in and cancelled it. Now, they could have just left it in place and gone, oh, it's the Tories that did it, right? Why would they cancel that only to do it themselves? That would be madness.
Yeah.
They're not looking to. And in fact, if you read
is this stuff that's getting reported in the media?
No, but if you read the budget, I did a video on this a few weeks ago. It says in the budget how they're going to make these savings, and none of them are from cuts. Now, whether it's realistic is another matter, but every single one of them is from tackling fraud in the system. It's not from telling people that they can't claim benefits anymore. It's not by telling people that they're going to have less money. It's by tackling fraud. Now, whether they can tackle fraud to that extent is another matter, but that is what it says in the budget.
We've got another super chat coming from Ivan Ambrose. With regards to Ukraine, what role have the United Nations got now with pushing for peace? I'm hearing nothing from the UN recently. The UN. Yeah,
they're just a talking shop.
They're
there to calm people down.
And America's pulled out of the UN refugee. They pulled out of UNRWA. They've also for Palestine. They've also pulling out of UNESCO in the next couple of months. I mean, everything the UN was put together to be is being dismantled, and it has been dismantled because we stupidly allowed Russia a permanent place on the Security Council, which we never should have done. We should have given it to fucking Japan or someone else.
Well, the thing is, we could have technically chucked them off when they stopped being the Soviet Union, because technically it was the Soviet Union. Done. Yes. And it's like, you're a different
Don't be nice.
Now, mate.
Don't be nice. Don't be nice. Don't be nice to crocodiles, because they're a crocodile.
But anyway,
and they will just eat you.
They did what they did. But I mean, the UN always seemed to me to be like, the Harry Enfield thing, the Three Scousers. Calm down, calm down. That's what the UN is. It can't do anything.
Racism, that, Phil.
It can't do anything. No, it's not. It can't do anything. It just has to.
Well, I'll tell you what it does do, Phil. Is it empowers dictators, because it says basically that if you are the leader of a country, we're not going to do you for any of the crimes that you commit until you're not the leader of the country anymore. So where's the incentive to step down and retire if you know you're going to spend the rest of your days in the International Criminal Court or in the Hague?
Well, you would only do that still if you found yourself in a country that wanted to hand you over, which can sometimes be your own country.
Yes.
I mean, in Mauritius, for example, they've already arrested the former prime minister, haven't they?
Yeah. But what I mean is, like, even in the country that they live in, unless they are ousted by a political military coup or something, they can't stand trial. They're protected by the UN, and by UN diplomacy means that if there's a UN meeting and Putin turns up to it, like Mugabe used to turn up to these meetings, you can't arrest him for all the numerous crimes he's committed. You can't arrest Netanyahu because they're given protection by the UN. So I think it encourages dictators and lunatics.
Well, the problem is, you could say that, but at the same time, if we didn't have the UN, then we also still wouldn't have a system that dealt with them.
Yeah.
At least we now have a system that lets us know what percentage of the world thinks they're bastards,
Yeah.
because you can have a vote on it.
Okay, well, let's move on to talking about a little bit about Labour, whether they're doing well, whether they're not doing so well. So let's talk about the economy for starters.
Please.
So all the indicators of the economy, I mean, they're not brilliant, but they're not bad, are
They're-
they?
they're-
We're not in recession, are we?
The thing is, we're not. That's disappointing the Tories. But also, every single, like with the news today, so there's been another raft of economic news today. So now, however you want to try and measure the economy in a way that people care about is now better than it was this time last year. So people are going, oh, inflation. It's like, yeah, it's 3/4 of what it was this time last year. Hiring is now up. We were told about all these job losses that were going to happen. It's like there's an increase in hiring. And it's believed, and it's not because the national insurance increase isn't a big deal for employers. It's because we don't have enough workers in the country. And also something interesting that came through from Bloomberg is there was this fear. So what used to happen with companies is you go through a bit of a downturn, so you cut back on staff, you made a load of staff redundant. Then when the good times roll again, you hire, you rehire, and you do this quite regularly. But what they found was with the pandemic, so they got rid of a load of staff with the downturn. And then when the economy was improving a bit, they couldn't get them back. So there's believed to be some what's called labour hoarding, where companies are not getting rid of staff just because they can afford to and it'll be cheaper, because of fears of not getting them back again. So this sort of fears have been booked. So we've got an increase in hiring now because of the interest rate cut. We've now got more consumer confidence creeping back in, and that has, of course, mean that there's more demand for goods and services. So companies are hiring again. But everything you look at, so inflation is down on this time last year. Interest rates are down on this time last year. The hiring has increased by more than it did this time last year. NHS waiting lists are down compared to last year, because that's important for the economy as well, because the quicker you can get workers treated, the quicker they're back to productivity. Energy bills are lower. This is the thing I don't understand why Labour don't go on about it, because they're going on about this £200 winter fuel allowance. And it's like, okay, so they've done that, and it was probably a bit politically naive. But like, what would you rather? Some old people got £200 towards their energy bills, or everyone's energy bills are £200 cheaper? Everyone's energy bills are £200 cheaper compared to this time last year. £190 technically if you use the average amount. And it's, you just think, like, what measure of the economy is there, apart from actual GDP, which no one cares about, which is not better than this time last year? I can't find anything.
Yeah. We just got another super chat in there from Jürgen Spluggen. Thank you very much, Jürgen Spluggen, for the £5 super chat. Keir Starmer says don't tariff for defence spending. Trump will say sell the NHS, regardless of the economic stats, as right-wing media are pushing for a failing state. Yeah, I agree that that's something that Trump will say. I don't think it's going to actually happen, though. And talking of the NHS, one of the other good news stories this week that flew under the radar because Labour are so shit at comms is that Labour actually hit their 2 million target for NHS waiting lists like half a year earlier than they thought they were going to. So let's dig into this. So, I mean, 2 million by November. That's what I learned.
So they said they would have an extra 2 million appointments within the first 12 months. And 5 months into it, they've done, but that is, which is still good, and it still means they are very likely to blow away that target. But mathematically speaking, what it means is there were 2 million more appointments in that 5-month period than the equivalent 5-month period a year before. In theory, if over the next 7 months, which includes the last 2 months, which we don't know the data for, if in theory at the rest of the time we end up giving out, for whatever reason, fewer appointments, they could still miss the target. So they still can't say the target's definitely been met, if you want to be pedantically mathematical, as I often am, until the year is over.
Do you have to be? Can't we just have a win for once? Can't we just go, fuck yeah?
At the same time, we can say that all they then had to do for the remaining 7 months was deliver at least as many appointments as in the equivalent 7 months from the previous year when the Tories were in office. and then they will definitely have met their target. So they are very likely to meet their target.
Right.
It's just that mathematically, it's like someone in the lead in a race. Until they've got over the finishing line, they haven't actually won.
True, I guess. But then there's also another bit of good news. I don't know if you can knock this one down a little bit, but the youth mobility scheme that we were told we weren't going to get by everyone on the left, who said, "Oh, Labour are not even thinking about this thing, and it's an open goal, and we should do it." And it turns out they're doing it. They're doing a youth mobility scheme for 2 years to come to the UK and live and work from anywhere in the EU.
Yes and no.
Okay,
that's our proposal. We've not agreed anything. There is no agreement. But that's the maddening thing for me. So you had some people on the rejoin side who were going, "Oh, Labour's really absolutely disgraceful." And I did a video last August because the Times were reporting on the government off the record saying, "Yeah, we're basically going to go along with it. We just need to sort a few things out." And everyone was going, "No." And I said, "Look, here is the government saying this." And they're going, no, because I saw this headline, Phil, prove it. We want to see a statement in Parliament. So then I just left it. I said, right, well, we'll just wait till it happens then. And then I'm going to get me I told you so banner out. So now, then what happens? Yes, we have a few months where Labour are going, But ultimately what's happened now is Labour have come up with their own proposal. So that basically proves two things. First, talks were ongoing. Secondly, that Labour were actually thinking about it themselves because they've now come up with their own proposal. Now, the EU will still want them to loosen it up a little bit because there's, for example, a cap on numbers, and there's a couple of other things about it. Oh, brilliant. But we have a proposal. We have a summit in May. Keir Starmer will want to announce it at that summit, if not before, but he'll want to, because that's what you do a summit for. A summit's like a gaming convention. It's like BlizzCon. Yeah. So that's you've already done stuff for it, but you want to announce it then. And he doesn't want to go to that summit and come away talking about warm words. He's had those meetings. He needs to come away saying, "We've agreed this thing."
Yeah.
I suspect he'll want to have agreed more than that, but at least that.
Okay.
So we're now going to have a period. And remember, there are now weekly meetings taking place between Nick Thomas-Symonds, who's effectively our Brexit minister, or EU minister is a better way of putting it now, because we're looking at closer relations, and Maroš Šefčovič, who's the EU commissioner, the poor sod, who had to deal with that cretin Liz Truss at one point, and other associates, and David Frost.
This week. She says that we need a MAGA moment for the UK. This is a woman who was rejected by her own party after just 44 days as Prime Minister. A woman who was rejected by her own constituents in South Norfolk. South Suffolk, is it?
From Norfolk. It's a Norfolk seat.
Yeah.
Because the phrase, normal for Norfolk.
But she's just not all there, is she? She's like, this is why we need a Trump moment.
I mean, the thing I keep saying, it's absolutely hilarious. So when Boris stood down, it took 60 days to install Liz Truss into number 10. And then it took just 50 days to put Rishi Sunak in.
Yeah.
So that's how long she lasted. That was the entire...
If that was me, I'd just get my head down. Do you know what I mean?
Oh, would I? It'd be embarrassing.
I just wouldn't want to be seen in public. I'll put a bag on my head. Anyway, finally, before we go, I want to talk about the fact that Labour have dropped their proposals that they mentioned in their manifesto that they were going to make it easier to change your gender. And they seem to have just dropped this now. Is this part of a anti-trans thing in Labour?
I think there is. But at the same time, I also don't know that they've dropped it. So it's based on an article, I think it was in the Times, and it's an I'm not saying they've made up a quote at all. It's an off-the-record quote. I'm sure it's real, but from someone who thinks that, like, the thing with the self-ID, it's a really quick and easy thing to do. They should have just done it straight away.
It's in the Guardian, the article. Labour shelves plans to make it easier for people to legally change.
The Guardian are reporting on it because what happens is whenever any newspaper reports on something, every other newspaper, which is scratching around for something to talk about, reports on the same thing, but it originally came from the Times. They're the ones who did the journalism on it. But anyway, it doesn't matter. I believe that it was a genuine quote. I'm not suggesting the Times made it up anyway.
Yeah.
But the way I look at it is like it wasn't in the King's Speech, so they weren't doing it in the first thing anyway.
Yeah.
It's a manifesto commitment, so they have to do it before the next election. Otherwise, they do not get to claim that they delivered on the manifesto.
Okay.
What I suspect is happening now, or at least we say hope is happening now, is they're on the defensive because Reform UK are ahead in the polls, and they are now desperately trying to tread a tightrope so that they don't, because they know that their major things aren't going to come through for another year or so, and they're waiting until they can start to boast some of those things, and then.
So you think it'll still happen? Because reading between the lines, I see.
I'm not certain. I'm not saying I'm totally certain. Yeah. What I'm saying is, they weren't doing it now anyway because it would have been in the King's Speech. Yes. Like, nothing that wasn't in the King's Speech is being done now.
Yeah. So this is a bit of a non-story, isn't it? So
not necessarily.
This Parliament is in this year, or the year starting for the King's Speech. But it says in the article, a Labour source confirmed to the Guardian that the changes were not a priority for the government, which I thought that's what you'd say.
That just means it's not.
But this is the other thing, and may not be brought forward before the next general election, which would be reneging on the
that would be reneging on a promise.
The Labour Party has not formally scrapped this manifesto pledge to reform the gender recognition process, but the fact that legislation to implement it did not appear in the King's Speech reflects that it's not a priority for ministers, which is basically the same thing said in another manifesto. In other words, so do you think that this is something that we should be overly concerned about?
I do think we should be concerned. I don't
progressive
think
channel that cares about our viewers.
If you're going to talk about, for example, the linking it in with that youth mobility scheme, I thought anyone who made a big fuss about the youth mobility scheme completely wasted their time. Utter waste of time. Labour are announcing this now, not because of any pressure from them, not because of any belly aching from them. They'd announced back in August that they were going to do it. So it was already going to happen, regardless of any belly aching. However, this is something where there probably are people in Labour who would like to just quietly shelve it. I mean, there might be some transphobes, but it might just be because
treating as a fucking transphobe.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure. It really doesn't matter.
Come on, if they haven't got the time to do this, because they have got the time. Other things to be getting on with, but they've got time to ban trans kids from getting their hands on beta blockers, even through a private medication. A private prescription. But if you're cis, you can get it. Come on.
Yeah, exactly. But that could just be explained by stupidity. That's just like that it doesn't understand it. It may be transphobia. It may not be. But something like this, I can believe that there are people who just think, oh, but it could lose us the gammon vote, and there's not that many trans people, so who gives a shit? I can believe that sort of thinking. It's not transphobic as such, but it's just, well, for me, we should keep reminding them that it's a manifesto commitment. And what was the bloody point they deliberately produced an underwhelming manifesto. Remember, this time last year, Keir Starmer ordered his shadow cabinet to bomb-proof their manifesto policies. We're not putting anything in. We are not guaranteed to deliver. That is what he said to his shadow cabinet. That is why some commitments were pulled back. That was the excuse, because we want to under-promise and over-deliver.
So considering this is in the manifesto,
yes, they do not get to say
believe that it will actually happen before the next.
It should happen if they want to say that they stuck to the manifesto, that they delivered it.
Yeah,
this has to happen because it's not legislatively difficult. It's not awkward. It's really easy. Yeah. It's got overwhelming support. There's no reason not to do it.
Most people in the chat seem to think that West Streeting is a transphobe, and I'm
not going to argue with it. I'm just going to say it can also be explained by other things. If it
quacks like a transphobe. Just before we go on, and we got a £2 super chat before from One Angry Pagan. It's nearly gone off the page. Sorry about that, mate. The Nature Restoration Fund has also been announced by Labour. This is one of the good things that they've done. Been announced in the last week or so. But yeah, so it's not. It's not a completely
I think we should keep saying it. I think we should keep mentioning it.
Yes.
I don't think it should be allowed to disappear.
Hey, you wrote this in your manifesto, guys. When are you going to do it? When are you going to do it? When are you going to do it?
I mean, from the next session onwards, they can do that. They've got the time to do it. Yeah. It shouldn't be a very difficult thing. It's just that I think, there'll be a lot of people. The pressure will work better. I mean, keep it on, but the pressure will probably work better at a time where Labour have sort of got their major legislation through. They're starting to boast about NHS waiting lists going down and stuff like that.
Yeah.
The polling's looking a bit better. They'll be because remember, how did this, like, Labour's they already changed some trans policies quite markedly. And if you recall, the timing was when they lost that Uxbridge by-election by like a few hundred votes. And they panicked. They panicked. And that's all it was. They suddenly panicked and they thought, they suddenly thought that a certain type of voter was more important than they really were. And the same thing will be happening now because they don't want this polling to be like too long lasting. Yeah. But they do have some things to boast about, but they're not doing it. So they obviously don't think they have things to boast about. And even though Keir Starmer tried to do a video on the NHS appointments and waiting lists, but because he doesn't treat social media seriously, I'm going to have a look how many pissing views he got. But he probably got about 30 views. Or
I think there's a wonderful... Go on. Sorry.
I was just going to say, so I think they just need to get into a place where they're calmer. And then we just need to start reminding a load of MPs about it. And like, what is the point in achieving everything in the manifesto, but one thing, because that one thing stops you claiming you delivered on the manifesto. Yeah. What is the point?
And also alienates fuckloads of your voters, because it's not just trans people who are affected by this, it's the families of trans people,
potentially.
The friends of trans people.
They would have that data though.
Yeah, there's a great message here from John. He just says, "Who has the time and the will to hate someone who hasn't done anything personal to you?"
Well, exactly,
mate.
This is the thing I say as well about like political bollocks. When people go about working
political
class
bollocks with Phil Moorhouse. That's the name of your new show.
Oh, people go, oh, working class this, working class this. We need to back the working classes. The working classes, mate, care about being able to get a doctor when they need one. They care about decent housing, a decent job, being able to get to their job without having to spend 3 hours on a pissing commute, getting a decent pay. That's what they care about. They don't care about your bollocks. So when they say, oh, Labour need to do this, they're not backing the working classes, like, they are. You are not. You are a upper middle class twat who's probably well intentioned, who thinks that they are, doing their best for the working classes. But the working classes, you ask them what they care about housing. We're getting the biggest expansion of affordable and council housing like ever in my lifetime. They care about NHS appointments. That's already been delivered on. We haven't even got the pissing budget in place yet. They care about, getting decent jobs. They care about, that job pays well, pay's going up. That's actually what's caused the inflation to tickle up a tiny amount. The fact that we're paying people more now. Yeah. These are the things they care about. Transport. So there's the devolution plans are massively important to that, so that you can actually have regions decide what their transport needs are. Yeah. These are the things that matter.
Well, okay.
It's not. I'm interested. Obviously, we're both interested in political philosophy, and we will talk about the importance of the minutiae. But it seems ridiculous to me to claim that you're sort of part of a working class like activist campaign when you're talking about things that the working class don't give a shit about.
Yeah. Oh, John says, life is hard enough as it is without creating imaginary enemies. Yeah, we don't have to imagine them. There's so many of them out there.
He got 1.1 thousand views.
Wow.
He's able to claim that he delivered on a promise 5 months, so 7 months early, so into 5 months. Keir Starmer, on his own channel, got 1.1 thousand views.
1,000 views. Oh, God. That's
when he's actually able to claim a win like 7 months early.
We've got cumulative views here of 1,028. So on this channel here, we've got almost that in the space of less than an hour. Anyway, Labour comms, get on the phone to us. Give us a call. Phil, I won't be able to do the agenda next week. Oh, hang on. The super chat's just come in. The Ivan Ambrose there, £10 super chat. Disability issues are my priority at the moment. The uncertainty Labour are inflicting on vulnerable people who are frightened by the slightest thing is uncalled for.
Yeah, I agree. Uncertainty. Again, I see no reason why they couldn't have set out red lines like they do for lots of other things.
Yes, they've done it for the EU. They say, look, we are not going to cut disability benefits. We're not going to do this. We're not going to do that. it would give people peace of mind. And especially if you're off work because of mental health problems, because you're suffering from anxiety, because you're suffering from stress, this isn't helping. Like, just...
No.
And this is a comms issue. It's not something that they have to wait to go through Parliament. This is simply...
No, because it's
giving
in
people
their
peace of
budget
mind, like
anyway.
Ivan.
They just have to keep reading out the line that they've already published.
Yeah. Indeed. Anyway, no, I was going to say I can't do it next week because it's my birthday. It's my birthday next week, Phil. But if you want to do the show, I'm happy to produce it for you. If you want to come on and talk about what's been going on in the UK, it's up to you. Or we could get someone to be me on the show.
Right.
And lend them me hat. Get Aid on or something. Aid is going to be on his own channel, Aid Thompson and Other Disappointments, at 7:30 tonight. Well worth a watch. And then Maximilian starts at 8:30. And then at 9:30, we've got the Friday Night Social here on this channel. So please join us for that. We've got a lot to get through. I want to talk about Trump and his external revenue service. Phil, he's going to get rid of income tax in America.
So he says.
Which is going to take £3 trillion out of the government coffers if he does that. And he's going to replace that by putting tariffs on everything coming into America. Do you know the value of all the stuff coming into America per year is? It's £3 trillion, or dollars, sorry, $3 trillion.
Dollars.
So we'll have to be 100% tax on everything coming in, 100% tariff on everything coming in, just to break even. And then if it works, because tariffs are so people make things in America rather than in another country, there'll be no money coming in.
Well, they're kicking out all the workers, you see. So how's that going to work? They have to invite a load of Mexicans in.
Yeah.
To make it for them.
Yeah, please make America great again, Mexico. One last super chat before we go. Jürgen Splurgen with £2. Thank you very much. Get Phil to number 10 to kick some social media arse.
They won't do anything if they don't recognize. Look, if they recognise they had a problem, there's people they know that they could approach that could tell them what to do. They don't recognise. The problem is, it's like, what was it? Was it Mark Twain or someone who said that the problem is not knowing something. It's not. I can't remember the exact wording, but it's like where you don't know what you don't know. Yeah. Like you think you know something, you've just got it wrong.
Yeah.
That's the problem.
Yeah.
That's the problem, that if it was like something where you were going thinking, I don't know how to do this, like when I got this mixer, so I got a new mixer for the microphone, which I'm not using because reasons, but I didn't know how to do a thing, first of all, but I didn't know that, so I looked it up. Whereas they think they know what they're doing with social media, or they think that social media is doing as well as it can do for them.
Yeah.
I don't understand how they can think that, but they do. They just don't realise the potential of it.
No, they don't.
And if you don't realise the potential, you're not going to invest any time talking to anyone to talk to you about it. Yeah. Why would you? They're busy.
Yeah. But we're not asking for government ministers to do this with us. We're asking for whoever they're paying to do their PR to do it.
They've got a huge comms team who are sit around at the moment because they don't think they've got anything to communicate.
Yeah.
They're spending a fortune on a massive comms team.
They hit the target, the 200 million target a few months earlier, and it's like
2 million. Let's not go mad.
Crickets. Was I say 2 billion?
You said 200 million.
Oh, I'm just getting upset. These big numbers, these don't mean anything after a while. Anyways, big thank you to Phil Moorhouse for joining us for the show this afternoon, and big shout out to all you watching at home, and thanks for all the lovely chat from our socialites in the chat there. If you would like to join our socialites in the chat, not just to subscribe, but also to get a little rose after your name and your name at the end of the show, all you have to do is hit there's a special, oh hang on, I got this set up, shit. There is a special little join button that is going to appear momentarily on here. There we go. Right, okay. So, oh no, that didn't work. Oh no, it didn't work. Sorry. Anyway, moving on. If you would like to join the channel, that's very cool of you, and it's only like £2 a month or something. So please get onto that. Big shout out to Johan and Witchy Goth and John in the chat. We've also got me mum. Hi mum, as well. And I'll say ta-ra for now. I'll see you hopefully at 9:30 tonight. If
you get Terry Christian on, you could talk to him about the Premier League table.
Oh yeah, couldn't I? I'll give him a shout. That'd be really funny. But the thing is, other people in the chat on Friday nights, they're not really into football at all. Mike Dick's he's not not into football at all, which is funny because he's got a name that sounds like he might be a football manager, or at least a pundit. Anyway, so thanks very much for watching, and until next time, I'll say hello, good evening, welcome, and goodbye.